So there it is, folks. Gun expert and pro-gun control journalist Ryan Riley can't tell the difference between rubber bullets and earplugs. Yeah, good morning, Ryan. You're having one heck of a week there. So Eric Reed has a little bit more on that story if you want to go and laugh at Ryan Riley over at BuzzPo. And the title of the article over there is, of course, Excuse Me, Earplugs or Rubber Bullets? So go ahead and take a look, folks. Even if you are pro-gun control, you can sit there and look at this and maybe educate yourself and get some real facts before you open your mouth and make yourself, well, remove all doubt on whether or not you're an idiot, as Ryan Riley sort of already did. Other things going on in Ferguson. As I stated, the Missouri National Guard has now been deployed, or a portion of them have been deployed to Ferguson to enforce a curfew and help out the law enforcement there, because the riots have been going on for over a week nonstop. I mean, this is getting almost as bad as the L.A. riots after the well, that's the one where Reginald Denny was pulled out of his truck and had the snot beat out of him. But that was the Rodney King trial. At the end of that, when they had the riots in L.A. over a jury verdict, they turned around and did that kind of violence against their neighbor for no frickin' reason other than they had an emotional excuse to go and be stupid. And that's what it was. And there really was no excuse for what the people were doing in L.A., just like there's no excuse for what the violent people are doing in Missouri. They can claim the outrage, but that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it because they have an excuse to do criminal acts that they think they can get away with because of the situation. But anyway, National Guard Governor Jay Nixon has called out the National Guard and stood them up in Ferguson to try to quell everything going on there. And of course, people are pointing their fingers and saying, it's martial law. It's martial law. It's no martial law than putting the National Guard down on the border between Texas and Mexico. It is not martial law, folks. And this is why it's not martial law. They're not stood up by the federal government under Title X. It's just that simple. This is the governor using the National Guard properly within his purview in case of an emergency, a state-level emergency, which evidently this is, in order to keep the peace and to assist law enforcement. So there you have it, folks. There's no violation of posse comitatus. There's not going to be civilians dragged in front of a military tribunal instead of going through the regular court system. And that's where it becomes martial law as well, is, citizens are brought before a military tribunal and given military justice if they commit a crime. And that's another portion, like I said, of what makes it would make it martial law, and that is not the case. It's not the first time National Guard has been sent in for an emergency. In Illinois, I spent a few years with the Illinois National Guard prior to going active duty and being active Army. And there were a couple times that we were called up to assist prison guards during prison riots. That is not martial law. That is not a violation of posse comitatus. That is a legitimate use by the governor of the National Guard within his state or her state. So people screaming posse comitatus may want to actually review the law and how it applies to the National Guard and do a little bit more than just reading the definition of posse comitatus and saying, I got it, they're violating. No, they're not, folks. It's a little bit more detailed than that. But covering the National Guard in Missouri, or the Missouri National Guard going to Ferguson, Stephen Ale over at BuzzPo has a pretty good article there that kind of discusses the use. And of course, in BuzzPo fashion, he's got a little bit of tongue-in-cheek and snark tossed in there as well to make it a little bit more entertaining, as well as to get the facts out to you folks. So I encourage going and reading his article, but there you go, have it with the facts, folks. Is the National Guard's there? They're enforced a curfew over the last couple of nights. It looks like they're going to stay there for a little bit while longer. And meanwhile, while that's going on, more and more information is coming out. There is one video that's been snagged up and is being looked at by the powers that be, where a potential witness overheard somebody telling, or I'm not exactly sure exactly what it is, because I tried hearing it and the audio is terrible and there are no subtitles. But the gist that I got was that that Michael Brown was basically told or said he was going to, or in any way, shape, or form was witnessed, in quotes, bum rushing the police officer. So it wasn't like he was running away and the police officer tried to stop him. It wasn't like he was being in any way detained or anything and resisted arrest or whatever. He charged after the police officer, according to that account. And of course, the witness statements coming out back and forth is all convoluted and contradicting each other, because there were reports that the police officer shot Michael Brown in the back as he was fleeing. But the autopsy has come out, and Michael Brown was shot 6 times. 4 of those times were in the arm, and 2 were in the head, and all of the shots were to his front, not to his back. The entry wounds were in his anterior, not his posterior. So he was going after the police officer. He was facing the police officer when he was shot. And of course, there's the other information that's come out that allegedly Michael Brown was involved in a strong arm armory or robbery, or in a form of armed robbery, or maybe it was unarmed, but still he was kind of doing thuggish behavior. Exactly what exactly went down there is also convoluted with multiple conflicting reports, but he was involved in a robbery prior to this. Now, the police officer was not responding to that robbery from other reports. He was responding to something else, and Michael Brown charged after him as he got out of his car or as he approached. So who knows exactly what went on? The reports are so conflicting. What we do know is Michael Brown may have been involved in a robbery. He may have been attempting to attack the police officer. The police officer did shoot him 6 times in the front. He was not fleeing at the time, and that's what we know factually. The rest of the information, I'm sure, will come out piece by piece. But there you go. As more facts and more evidence come forward, it shows that a lot of the rioting and everything that have been going on there were an emotional response based on 0 factual evidence. And it was just people reacting and jumping to conclusions. So there you have it, folks. There's the news coming out of Ferguson, Missouri. So go ahead and hop over to BuzzPo and read Steve Ailes' article on the autopsy. There's other articles, of course, flying around the interwebs discussing the same thing, but Steve Ailes did a good job of writing it up. So go ahead and head over there. Now, before we get into other things, I do have a little note going into our military-related news for those of us who support our military brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and neighbors and cousins and uncles, etc., that may be uniformed military or out there serving or have done their time and served and are now veterans and back. So a little spot of news of interest, and this is completely unbiased. It's just a statement of something that is going on. So make up your own mind on whether you agree or disagree and why or why not. But a retired military person, and I'll try to find the name out for you folks, but because I don't have it at hand. But he has started up a kind of a campaign and a fundraiser to try to build a national monument to the gay and lesbian veterans who served in the military and fell defending our great nation. So there's some military news for you. You know, take that as you will, as a step towards whatever. But that's the latest initiative for a national monument to our valiant and brave men and women who have defended this great nation. So that's the latest special shiny group that's out to get their little monument and statue. I'm still wondering when we're going to get a national monument for the Iraq War and a national monument for the Afghanistan War. I suppose it's going to be a few years in the coming because it took how long after Vietnam before they got theirs. But be an interesting thing to see. I'm sure as soon as it's erected, I'll start planning my trip to go and see it. Being that I'm a veteran of those wars. So anyway, there's the military news. So let's move on to other news. And I got all sorts of oodles of questions on this over the weekend, folks. And I know it wasn't mentioned in Friday's show. But well, before we do that, let's see if we can hear a little something from one of the parties involved on a different topic. So let's see. Yeah, before we move on to the next topic, let's move and listen to what the words from somebody in that issue has to say on the topic of veterans before we get to that other issue.
Our men and women in uniform have valiantly served and profoundly sacrificed for our nation. That's why Texas is expanding staffing at the Texas Veterans Hotline with experts trained to help veterans deal with the VA. Callers can learn what they qualify for, and in the most urgent cases, TVC experts will work directly with the VA to help veterans get the answers and care they need and deserve. Call the hotline at 1-800-252-VETS. Thank you.
And I suppose that's a fair way to segue over into everything that's going on with Governor Perry. Have you heard? Evidently, some people. Well, let's try to back this up a little bit. Governor Perry has been officially indicted by a Travis County, Texas grand jury on the charge of abuse of power. Yeah. There's the kind of the surface story. And a lot of people have asked me about it over the weekend. I reported on it. I wasn't the first at BuzzPo to report on it, but I was able to dig in and get some statements from several people concerning the whole indictment. I got Perry's initial response as well as his general counsel's response, and kind of put those together and put it up there for people to go and look at and read. But the questions come up on where is this all coming from? Well, the DA who prosecuted the indictment did so because, well, we can't really, I'm not in her head. I'm not her, so I can't speak for her. However, her actions do speak for her, and her past speaks for her. And she has a rather questionable past. She has done, this is called lawfare, and she's done this before to other conservative politicians who she happens to politically disagree with and strongly disagree with. And she's ended a couple of political careers, not because the the court cases that she brought up went to fruition and actually sentenced or convicted, or in fact, none of them have. They all failed to convict or bring in a jury decision in her favor. But what they were effective in doing was ruining political careers of her opponents, because she tended to time these just right to screw with the campaigns. And there's a lot of people who think that she may be doing this time to Governor Perry. Now, she's claiming that Perry defunded the Office of Public Integrity as a form of retribution against her. And there is a way you can look at that and see that as take it that way, because the DA in question happened to back in April of 2012, April 12th of 2012, she was extremely drunk off her gourd and driving and got arrested. And when she was arrested, she threatened the careers of every police officer involved in arresting her. She attempted to resist arrest. She got kind of violent. When they got her in the holding cell, she started banging her head against the bars, and they had to restrain her in order to protect her from harming herself. And she was 3 times the legal limit for her blood alcohol. She was sloshed. Somehow, and by the way, folks, that she was drunk at the level that in many states that would constitute what's called an aggravated DUI, meaning she was not just like misdemeanor, first-time charge, made a mistake and didn't wait long enough after having her second beer before leaving the restaurant drunk. She was drunk off her behind, had no purpose being anywhere near a car or her car keys, and drove anyway, and was dangerous drunk. It's aggravated DUI. It's obvious being that drunk, she had no respect for the DUI laws. Now, she had been known for being quite harsh in prosecutions, especially towards a couple of minors who were drunk driving, not aggravated, but were drunk driving and wanting the book thrown at them. But when she came due, she started screaming that she's a public official, she deserves special treatment, and she ended up getting that. She only got sentenced to 45 days, which she didn't even serve all of. And somehow, she's still in office. For what should have been a felony conviction, she is still listed on the bar. She was not disbarred. She should have been. She's still in office when she should have been removed from office if she didn't resign. That is the truth of the matter, but she wasn't, for whatever reason. Somehow, she convinced the people of Travis County to leave her in office. Well, Travis County, under the Travis County DA's office, that's where the state had decided to put its public integrity investigations and prosecutions unit, their Office of Public Integrity. Well, Perry said this is a state function, this Office of Public Integrity, and somebody who obviously has some corruption issues or has some integrity issues probably should not be in charge of such an office. So he defunded the office underneath her until such time as she would step down. He line item vetoed the budget, which is purely within his rights as the governor within the Constitution of the state of Texas. So that's what we know. Now, whether or not that was considered a vindictive act, well, that's up to your own judgment. And if you're sitting as a juror on the trial when it does happen, if it doesn't get dismissed, that is, you're going to have to weigh that and other evidence as it's presented as to whether or not that actually was Governor Perry's intent, was to get back at her and overreach, or if he was just enforcing the law and the Constitution through his own means, because